I would like to introduce Oliver Hunter. Oliver is an inspiring stand-up comedian. Welcome, Oliver.
Thanks for having me, Tegan. It's great to be here. And again, I'm really looking forward to it. It's a great day, and I'm glad everyone's here to celebrate it. And it should be good fun. Are you good for me to? You want me to start? Oh, sorry. I was like, is there more from you? But okay, I'll just share my screen, and we'll kick on. Okay, so I thought I'd start from the beginning. So my name's Oliver Hunter, as some of you have already seen. I am 25 and I'm based in Albury. I was born with cerebral palsy. For those who don't know, it's a neurological condition that you're diagnosed with usually from birth. I was diagnosed when I was 18 months old, and that stemmed from my mum. She sort of noticed when I was about 18 months that I hadn't developed the way I should have been. I wasn't walking. I was struggling to balance, and I couldn't sit up by myself and didn't have the strength to hold myself up. And I remember I asked her about this the other day, and I said, "Oh, like what was your, how did you feel at the time? Like, were you worried? Like, what was your feeling?" And she said to me, she goes, "Oh, I wasn't like I was worried, but it didn't seem like it was life threatening at the time, any of your symptoms or your condition." I checked my baby book. She had a baby book, and she said, "I looked at what your symptoms and condition looked like in the baby book, and there was a list of diagnoses, and cerebral palsy or CP was the only one that you wouldn't die from." So I just picked that one, and turns out it was that one. So she was pretty spot on there, Mum. And basically, no one really knows what can cause CP still now, and but it may have had something to do with me being born. I was born about 6 weeks premature, so that could have had a impact on the CP and causing the CP. And I think importantly too, CP, because it's neurological, it affects everything. Like, it affects my whole body. My technical the type of CP is spastic diplegia, which my legs, my lower body is majority of that is affected. So I use a wheelchair for the majority of my mobility. So I can walk with assistance. I have a walking frame, and I use that for like physio and just for function and exercising rather than practical day-to-day activity. I get around my chair for majority of my day. Yeah, this picture here, I thought I'd show. This is me when I was about 9 years old. I used to ride a tricycle around town, and that's me riding home from primary school. I used to tow. I don't know if you can see there. I used to tow my wheelchair on the back. So I put all my. I'd get my teacher at the time. She was an amazing person. She would help me load up every afternoon. She'd help me on the bike. I don't know if you can see. My feet had to be strapped to the pedals because I didn't have the capability to hold my feet on the pedals and ride the bike. So they had to be strapped. And then all my wheelchair, the seat, the backrest, everything was stripped off and put in the basket. And then we used a couple of like straps to tie my wheelchair to the back. And I used to ride on home every afternoon. A funny story about my bike, I used to ride around the town with one of my best mates in primary school. And every time after it rained, we'd ride around town chasing puddles because we just wanted to ride through the mud and through the puddles. And there was this one afternoon, it poured rain the day before, so we're like, perfect, puddles is going to be everywhere. We're going to have a good time. And we went to the footy oval, and puddles, because the footy oval was it was a gold mine for puddles. So we'd go to the footy oval, and there was this one massive puddle that every time it rained, it filled up, but I was never game to ride through it because I just was afraid of fall off. I wouldn't be good enough. I wouldn't be strong enough to get through it. So my mate, he rides through it, no problem. It's full of mud, full of water. It's pretty deep. And he said, right, it's time for you to go through it. You should be fine. You just ride straight through it, put your head down and just go as fast and as hard as you can. But the key is you cannot slow down. You cannot put your brakes on. You just have to commit and just go. And like, this is like, we're 9 years old and he's giving me a good pep talk. And I said, right, I'll do it. So I push right, I ride as hard as I can. I get a good run up or ride up. So I get, and I just was going as hard as I could. And as I hit the puddle, I just hesitated. I hit the brakes and I hit the puddle pretty hard. And there must have been really thick mud in the puddle, and I've hit it hard. And because of my momentum and because it stopped so suddenly, I've hit the mud and fallen off my bike. And because I was strapped to the pedals, I didn't exactly fall off. I just fell with the bike. The whole bike came down with me. Luckily, it didn't fall on me. It fell beside me. But basically, I end up face first in the puddle, mud all over me. I was fine. The thing I was most worried about was my mum would be angry because my school uniform was filthy. She was. I was correct to think that. And the great thing I said, I looked at my mate. I was like, well, you're going to have to help me get up now. So he took his socks and shoes off, and we spent the next about 45 minutes trying to get me up. And I had to unstrap the pedals, and he picked the bike up, and we got back on the bike. And I just remember seeing all these cars drive past, just heads out the window, going, "What has happened there?" And one lady did pull up and goes, "Are you guys all right?" And by that point, we'd got up and we rode off. And to just wrap that story up, the funniest thing for me was about 15 years later, we were having my mate's 21st, who was with me that day. And he said, "Oh," and we were just telling, because we've been friends since we were 7 years old, 8 years old. And he said, "Oh, that story, the time when we rode around the puddles and you fell out and I had to get you off the bike and I told you to be confident and to ride through the puddle." I said, "Yeah, I'll never forget that moment. That was hilarious." And he said, "Yeah, I always knew you were never going to make it. I just wanted to see if you would fall off, and I thought that would be funny." So I said, "Well, to be fair, like, it was funny, but you wrecked a pair of shoes and a pair of socks to get me out of the water. And it was totally worth it." And I think I wanted to start with that story because I've always been surrounded by family and friends. My immediate family, like I said, my mum, and I got 3 younger brothers. I'm the oldest. So as you can see there's just a couple of image descriptions of one. The first picture here is myself and my brother Spencer. He's the second oldest. A couple of years ago we went over to the US, and that's us at the Grand Canyon. Amazing spot if you ever wanted to go to the Grand Canyon, if we can ever travel again once COVID leaves us alone. But it was an amazing time. Grand Canyon is surprisingly easy to get around in a wheelchair. You thought a natural rock face and national park might be difficult. It's pretty. I could do it, and I think most people could do it. And he was a lot of help. I called him for that. We were together for 6 weeks on our holiday across the US. We went coast to coast and we went everywhere. I just called him my caddy for the 6 weeks. He carried my bag most of the way, and I just directed of where to go. So that was an amazing time. And I think as well that comes back to, and the other picture here is with my other 2, Spencer as well, and my other 2 brothers. Felix is the one closest to me there with his arm around me. He's the youngest, and Harry, he's next to Felix there. He is the second youngest there, so he's between Spencer and Felix. And these pictures are from a time we did a fun run. We pushed up a mountain and down a mountain, or I pushed, because I decided it was a charity fun run, and contacted all my family. I said, let's do this run. And it's up a mountain, and then it's back down the mountain, and it's about 12.5 Ks up and down the mountain. And I think this was one moment where all my family looked at me and said, I wish we weren't so empowering so this kid wouldn't think he could push up a mountain, because it was a hard push. But I will say it was one of the best experiences going down the mountain. If you ever really want to find thrill in your life, find yourself a wheelchair and push down a mountain that's with no traffic. And I honestly think I was going about 80 k's an hour in my chair, and I was flying down this mountain. And then I think just to bring it back to my family and to mum, it's like I had a lot of surgeries growing up. I was a patient at the Royal Children's Hospital for about 16, 17 years. My first surgery was I was about 3 years old. I just remember laying in hospital bed. I had 2 big plaster casts on, and I had they called it broomstick, because I had a stick in between my legs to keep my legs apart, because what they did was they lengthened my abductors and hamstrings, and that to keep them apart, to keep them stretched. So I've had many a time, and usually that involved me in hospital and mum laying in the visitor chair next to me, and I'm trying to do her best to sleep. And there was a lot of hard times there where you'd have surgery, and I think the hospital stays. Sometimes I think the hospital stays were the easiest part, because when you're in hospital, you've got the nurses, the doctors, everyone's coming to look after you, and especially at the children's hospital, it's a very holistic sort of full way to care. So your parents and your family, there isn't a lot of stress for them. But the hard thing is that I think when I was growing up, you were kind of forgotten, was the 6 or 8 weeks, 10 weeks at home of recovery, where you didn't have the full-time hospital care, and your parents and your siblings sort of were on the journey with you. And I basically was thinking about like the experience for my siblings, and all younger than me. Like it's a hard, it's a bit of an ordeal to, like, one, see your oldest brother going through some of the stuff I went through, and two, like, my parents were away quite a bit with me with medical appointments, and if I was in hospital after surgery, I was there usually for about 5 days to 7 days, so they wouldn't see mum or dad for a while, and then they would occasionally come down to Melbourne to see me in hospital. And I can imagine that would have been quite confronting. But again, like we're a great family, and another thing is, I often say, we go on a lot of family holidays. I never was left out of a family holiday, and I think that's a real testament to mum and dad. They always we made it work. They never really had the conversation with me. It was like, oh, it was never, you can do anything you want. Your disability doesn't matter. You're just like everyone else. It wasn't quite that. It was just, and I sometimes think that can be a little bit, maybe patronizing or condescending to say to someone, oh, you can do anything you want. You're just like, it's like, you're not exactly like everyone else. Your disability is part of you, and you should be. I've got to a point where I'm quite proud of that, and it's just part of my life. And I think my family always encouraged that, yeah, this is who you are, and this is part of your life, and there are ways to get around it, and we'll figure out a way. So I went camping on family holidays to the beach or to the bush, or I was always there. And I think for some families, like that can be a bit too much, and it may put a child in respite or care, and that's okay. Like, that doesn't make them bad people, because sometimes it can be a lot. I'm lucky. I do have I am quite capable and have a high functioning. But I think I often say that my parents, they gave me the opportunity to hate camping. Like, I don't like sleeping on the ground in a tent. I just don't like camping in the bush and not having a shower. But because I went camping and because I was a part of the family experience, I was able to be part of it. And as I said, I was able to hate camping because I was part of it. I think the worst thing one of the worst things you can do with someone with disability is tell them about an experience. Like saying, "Oh, it's okay. You didn't miss much," or "Oh, it was amazing. You could have been there." It's like, well, let's figure out a way to allow and empower people with disabilities to be part of things. And if you're out there as well with a disability, you've got to do your best, in my opinion, to make it work for you. And I was very lucky to have this super supportive network of friends and family. And I understand that some people may not have as strong network as I did. And I would say to you, if you don't have a disability out there, maybe you could be that person for someone with disability. Sometimes all someone needs is someone to say yes, or nod their head and go, "Yep, I'll help you," or "We'll figure out a way to do it." Because I think that's all it can take. Is just we need to figure out a way. It may be a different way, or maybe doing things differently, or adapting something, or changing something. But like, because of how my family and how I grew up, I've had the confidence to travel. I've had the confidence to I was the first student at my high school with a disability in a wheelchair, and I remember my parents had to tell the Department of Education when I was in grade 4, I think, what high school I wanted to go to, and they met with the principal at Albury High, and he's a good man, Ian Crosley, his name is, and he had a meeting with mum and dad when I was in grade 4, so 3 full years before I was going to high school, and said, "Well, I would really like if you would send Oliver to Albury High, because that gives me a reason to fix the school and make it accessible." So what they did was they put a lift in, because the school's quite big and has, I think, 3 floors, and they joined a couple of the blocks of the school at the different buildings with massive walkways to make it fully accessible. And funny enough, I think a point I always make is you cater for the minority, you cater for majority. So they catered for one student at the time, like put all this investment into renovations, but that made it easier for the whole school. So that made it easier for if students hurt themselves playing sport and they were on crutches for a few weeks, they were able to use the lift to get to class. They didn't have to lug themselves up the stairs and potentially hurt themselves again. And then the walkways, there's 1,000 students at Albury High, so the new walkways that relieve so much congestion and traffic in the corridors. So I think that's an important point when we're thinking about access and design of buildings and facilities. Is if you cater for a minority, it often works out better for everyone. So I think but again, that's the point for me. In participation. And I was so lucky, and I always say to my family, like, and because of that, I was able to go to uni. I went to University of Wollongong. I studied a Bachelor of Communications and Media Studies. So that's me graduating there. That was a 3-year course, and that was a big deal too, because I left home for the first time. I lived independently for the first time. So a lot of that was overwhelming. But I just, when it got overwhelming, I knew I had this. It was instilled in me to be able to do it. Like, yes, I was nervous and I was worried that oh, what if this isn't accessible? What if I can't get here? What if I can't do it? But because of how I'd grown up and how I was raised, I knew that I would be capable, and I would just have to find a way. And I think for people with disabilities in general, I think we're good problem solvers, because we've grown up, and people well before me, in other generations, we've grown up in a world that wasn't at times inclusive, or wasn't giving us the best chance to succeed, and and we had to problem solve, and I remember I again went to the uni well before I was going to show up when I was in year 12, so a full year or 18 months before I went to uni. And I had a chat to a couple of different people at UOW, and I said, "Well, I want to come to this uni. Is the accommodation going to be accessible? What's the access like at the uni?" And there was a full process of making sure everything was all set to go. And again, they put in some work, and they renovated some things, and they put in some new walkways, and they fixed a couple of rooms up at accommodation. And now it's accessible for everyone. And I know for a fact that since I've left, there's been more students with disability. And, you know, I can't say that I am the reason for that, but the facilities are there now. So the University of Wollongong can cater for students with disabilities. And then, so that's just me holding the UOW alumni sign in my graduation gown. So that was a good day. And then the photo next to that is in my first year of uni, I skydived. So that was an amazing experience. And again, there's a funny story with that. I remember my friend who I'd met at uni said, "Oh, I want to skydive for my birthday. Do you want to come? Do you think you could do it?" And again, because of how I'd grown up, my answer was, "Yeah, I could. I'm sure we could do it. I'll figure it out." So we contacted the skydiving place, and they said, "Oh, yeah, you can come and do it. We've got a harness that you should be able to attach to your legs, and you should be able to just lift your legs up with your arms. If you can just hold on to that harness and lift it up, you'll be right to go." Because that was the issue, the landing. Because if I landed with my legs straight to the ground, like there was some problems. So I put they said, "Yeah, all you need is a doctor's certificate to say that you have what your diagnosis is, and that skydiving won't make that any worse, because we don't want to be held liable for that." I said, "No worries." So I took myself off to a clinic in Wollongong, and I hadn't been to the doctor there before, so I didn't know any doctors. So I went into this public clinic, and I saw this random doctor who I'd never met, and he said to me, he goes, "Oh, so what can I do for you today?" I said, "I just need a certificate from you to say that I can skydive." And he's like, "Well, first of all, why do you want to skydive?" It's like, that's not the point of this consult. We can talk about my mental health another day, but I want to skydive. So he said, "What do you want me to write?" I said, "Just write that I have cerebral palsy and skydiving won't make that worse." So that's what he wrote, word for word. I took it off to the skydiving company, and we took off and we skydived. So that was a great experience, and if anyone thinks they want to skydive, I would definitely recommend it. And especially, as you can see by that shot, over the beach is quite a view. But I think it's just, I've got this instilled in me that it's participation, and we have come a long way in general with disability in my eyes. There's just a couple of more photos here. I've got me with Dylan Alcott, and for those who don't know who Dylan is, he's a Paralympian and world champion tennis player, and now a media personality. That's me with him holding one of his Grand Slam trophies. And just to let you all know that I think we've got, between the two of us, Dylan and I, we've got 11 Grand Slam tennis championships and 4 gold medals. So I feel like between the two of us, that's a pretty good effort. And by the way, I've got 0 of those medals, so he's got all of them. But I got to know Dylan. I'll just go back. I got to know Dylan pretty well, and it's from guys like him and guys like Kurt Fernley. And I know Kurt Fernley's an ambassador for this day today. It's those sort of efforts from those people that have really helped us progress the attitudes and perceptions of disability. And I think when I was younger and growing up, we saw the model of disability that we had was the medical model. And for those who aren't aware of what the medical model means, it means that disability was viewed as a medical problem that needed to be fixed, or you needed to be healed or cured, or and don't get me wrong, I had a lot of surgeries, as I mentioned, and they would have helped me improve my quality of life. But I think when I was younger and growing up, I had this idea and attitude that my disability was a problem, like it had to be fixed. If I wanted to succeed in society, society said I had to be fixed and I had medical issues that needed to be healed for me to end up succeeding. But luckily, again, I had my support network that reiterated and always promoted that wasn't the case. But now I think we've moved away from that, and we're on to the social model, which the social model means that your disability isn't the issue, it's the society around you. So it's access to buildings, or it's people's perceptions and attitudes. And I think for those of us that have a disability, we're always going to be dealing with and trying to educate people with their sometimes ignorant attitudes or misguided perceptions and I think sometimes like you don't know what you don't know, so their ignorance they may be happy to be educated. um, we've just got to be willing and open to educate them. It amazes me though how many times I still get asked all the time. I'll be in a pub or in the shops or I'll just get people. I had a woman in the shops the other day. She comes up to me and I'm just trying. I think I was just trying to buy like some ice cream or something. And she said she came up to me. She goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry for what's happened to you. Like I'm so sorry. I can't imagine what you've gone through." And I said, this woman doesn't know me. She hasn't asked my name. She doesn't know anything about me. Like why is she assuming my life has been bad or I haven't been able to do what I wanted to do? And I just sort of politely said to her, I said, well, I mean, I should be apologizing to you if we're honest. Like, you're the one that's wearing socks and thongs. Like, I don't know what's happened in your life that has led you to wear socks and thongs. Like, if you're going to put a sock on, just commit to the shoe. So I don't know. But again, I'll give you an example of a positive way to talk about disability I've had in my life. When I was traveling, I was getting around New York City with a guy that I met in a backpackers in a hostel, and he said we were with together all day. Like there was a group of us that we just went around all New York, did all the hot spots in New York, and he was a young Irish fellow, really nice guy. And towards the end of the day, he said, "Oh, can I just ask you?" And he was a bit timid. So Oliver, can I just ask you? I've never met anyone with a disability. I don't have any experience with a disability. He goes, "Oh, if you don't mind me asking, like, why are you in the chair?" And I said, "I got cerebral palsy." And he just said, like, how have you done this? Like, how have you travelled overseas? Like, how do you do that? And to me, and I sort of explained, like, I had to make sure all the accommodation was accessible and obviously the flights were accessible for me, and I know what I'm capable of. Like I know what I can do, and I have the fun capability to transfer in and out of cars and buses and the different sort of things. And I think that was a really good moment compared to the woman in the shops where he and I think and he was just fascinated and didn't have a lot of knowledge, but he was just happy to ask. And I think for people with disabilities, we're happy to answer your questions. We're happy to talk about it. But if we're in the shops and you don't know, it's like, well, like, it does fascinate me. Like, why is that someone's first question? Like, what is wrong with you, or what happened to you? Like, nothing's wrong with you. Like, it's just the way your life is, and you've had to work within that. And I think if we can move on from what is wrong with you and let's just have more open and honest discussions, because a lot of people with disabilities are more than happy to talk about their life and talk about their disability and what they have to do to get by. Um, but yeah, it is fascinating. I always get this question, oh, what's wrong with you? But I thought another interesting fact that I'd share as well is we all know that the symbol for disability and symbol for access is the wheelchair. Um, so that's a you see that sign everywhere on toilets, on buildings. But a wheelchair and like someone in a wheelchair only accounts for about 6% of all disabilities. So that is, I found that fascinating when I saw that, and even for me, like with CP, as I said, it's neurological and it affects everything. Like my chair, people just see my chair and they think, oh, he can't walk or he struggles to walk, so he needs a wheelchair. But like I've got so many other sort of levels to my CP that people don't see. Like I can't do my shoelaces up because I don't have the dexterity or the fine motor skills to do my shoelaces up. I always struggled to do buttons up on a button-up shirt because I have figured that out now. But yeah, that took a lot of time and effort to figure out how to do that, and a bit of therapy as well to figure out how to do that. But like whenever I do something that requires a bit of fine motor skill and coordination, I get a bit bit shaky, like my hands and fingers are a bit shaky. But basically, all that means is I'm not very good at Jenga. So, which that's something that you can just live with. But as well, I think yeah, it's amazing what people they see and they go, okay, wheelchair's the extent of his issues, but no, there's a bit more. But I think my biggest achievement in that department is I spent many years when I was little and at primary school and high school, figuring out how I could flip the bird to people, because I just thought that was a very empowering thing you wanted to do, and I could never do it. So I spent hours in my room or at home just training my fingers to be able to get to flip the bird to people, and I figured it out. A lot of people know that I figured it out, including my parents, and Mum isn't too much of a fan of the idea, but she also knows how hard I worked on it, so she does congratulate me every now and then when I decide that I need to flip her off. But yeah, so that is that's another little funny one that I think that people don't really understand, and it is funny. But I'll just move on to what I was gonna. How am I going for time, Tegan? I don't know.
Yeah, you're good. Yep.
Yeah, all good.
Yep.
I thought I'd talk about. So I do a bit of, as Tegan mentioned off the top, I do a bit of stand-up comedy, and there are a couple of pictures here of me. One is front on of me on the stage from a distance, and one is a bit of an angled close-up of the same show. And I'm sitting there. Hopefully, I think I was getting a couple of good laughs on that show, so that's always nice. I started doing stand-up when I was at uni, and I just decided I wanted, that was something I was interested in. I wanted to try, and I've been going about 5 years, and that's presented its challenges too with having a disability. Like a lot of comedy shows, they're in pubs or they're in bars that are upstairs or downstairs, or they're in basements, or they're in like they're in the tops of rooftops or function rooms that aren't accessible. So I've had to sort of navigate my way around that world and do what I can to navigate that. But because I have had other jobs too. One of my first jobs was in a supermarket, and I just thought I'd ask. You can put it in the chat if you like. How many people, or like, give me a number or a percentage. How many people do you think in Australia have a disability or identify with having a disability? I can give you if anyone wants to do that, or I don't know if I can see the chat now that I've shared the screen. But I'll see what I'll give you a couple of minutes and we'll see what we can come up with. But it's actually 1 in 5 people have a disability or identify as having a disability, or about 18% in Australia. So I think that's a pretty big number considering. And of those 1 in 5, or of that 18%, only half have a job, which I think is a number that could definitely be improved. And obviously, there are a couple of reasons why that may be, that number might be so low. One could be that some people, due to how complex their disability is, or they may not have the capability or the capacity to hold a job, which is completely fine. And the other reason is one I've experienced, and I don't know if anyone else has, is that I've experienced a bit of discrimination. I've been denied opportunities because of my disability. And I think I'll tell you one little story is one of my first jobs was at a supermarket, local supermarket. And I remember I would just do little jobs here and there around the supermarket. I worked with one of my mates as well, so we always worked together and had a good time. But I always felt that it was a bit tokenistic, my job there. The supermarket just felt good because they were employing the kid in the wheelchair, and they thought that would just tick a box, and they felt good about themselves. And I think there was one moment when I knew this was the case. I remember I went in to the manager's office to check the roster for the upcoming week of shifts, and I wasn't on the roster. I was like, "Oh, that's weird. I should be working. I've worked the same shifts every week." And I said, "Oh, mate, why am I on the roster?" And he goes, "I didn't bother putting you on because it doesn't really matter when you come in. Like, it doesn't really matter that you're here. You just do whatever you want." And Like nothing. It doesn't really matter. And that is difficult to hear, like, especially when I was only, I think, 16 at the time. You start to wonder, like, how am I going to navigate this? How am I not going to navigate having a career and getting a job and living a life? Because that's people's attitudes now. Like, how are they going to improve? And I said, when I'm 16, 17, like, that's a lot to think about. And I think as well, that shows where there is a bit of work to do with disability. I think it's one extreme or the other. It's either you can't do anything for yourself and you won't be able to have a job, and how can you make a valuable contribution? And then the other extreme is people like Dylan, who's a Paralympian and a media superstar, and people think that's disability, and that's amazing for people like him and Kurt Fernley. But I think there is a bit of pressure there, or I felt a bit of pressure that was like, I have to be extraordinary to be ordinary. Like, I have to do something completely out of the box, whether that be win a gold medal at the Paralympics or get in the public eye and be in the media. I have to do something amazing for people to acknowledge that I've succeeded with a disability. I think so many people with disabilities, they either don't want to do that, they don't have the capability to do that, and they just want to be able to live a normal life, their normal life, have a job, have good friends, have a relationship. And I think we just need to give people the chance to do that. And I think we're getting there. We're getting there, slowly but surely. And I think this is exactly what this day is about. Is just to bring that up into our conversation and to make that known that people with disabilities just want to do their best, and it's up to us, whether we have a disability ourselves or not, is to jump in there and support each other and support them, and hopefully we can give each other the best chance to succeed. So I think that's it from me. I hope that was. I hope you guys got as much out of that as I did. No, thanks for having me. I'm open to some questions if there is any. I'll just share my screen, and then we'll have some questions if there is any.
Yeah, I've got a quick one, Oliver.
Yep. Ben, how are you?
Not too bad. Yourself? Yeah, so I work at council in the community space, and and something we do have a huge influence over locally is the local infrastructure.
Yep.
The parks, the playgrounds, footpaths, all of that. And it's definitely something we take into account. And just yesterday, we were looking at a design for a park or playground that's coming to Wangaratta, and looking at seeing if we can provide access not only through the playground but within it, so that kids can get to where the other kids are hanging out, really, and full access. But I guess the question was, is there something you've seen in your travels that's out of the box that we could really take on board? Any sort of really cool design or considerations that have been made that we can learn from?
That's a great question. I think I have seen a few in my travels. So there's a wheelchair accessible swing. So you can get a swing. Someone in a chair can roll up, and you can you can sort of chain their chair up or clip their chair in, and then that takes the weight off the chair. Like, the swing takes the weight, so then someone else can push the swing as if they were in the typical swing. So that's a great idea. And also, I remember, I think there's a park in Bright it's a mat, like the play structure is pretty big, but they have a ramp. It's ramped. So I remember when it first opened a few years ago, or more, I think at least 10 years ago now, we went down there as a family, up to Bright as a family, and the park was brand new, and I was able to roll up and around this park. So obviously, like, that was a pretty big structure, but there would be, I'm sure, a way you could come up with it. Yeah, if you could ramp something up, and someone in a chair could push up and be sort of up in amongst it all. But yeah, I think they're the sort of two ideas I can think of. But again, that's where it all starts too, man, is the council and the public spaces thinking, well, how back to that universal design, and that let's make it accessible from the start, and that way everyone can be involved, and everyone feels good.
Yeah, totally. Thanks.
Oliver, my name's Beck. I've got a question, if that's
Yeah.
It's around your involvement in Ability Fest.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if you can give us a little bit of an outline around your experience in that. And I know that working in council and Wangaratta is absolutely a place that enjoys coming together and ensuring that we all have fun together. What type of tips and tricks, I suppose, for any community events that we're actually looking at doing into the future, or that we're currently doing, that can ensure that we use those tips and tricks that you've got from Ability Fest, and probably explain too.
Yeah, no worries. I did forget to explain that one there. So that one of the pictures there, next to the Dylan Alcott one, was me volunteering at Ability Fest. Although that picture was taken after I'd finished volunteering, I was very much enjoying myself. But that's an accessible music festival that Dylan himself and his team have put together the last. It was meant to be the third one this year, but because of COVID, it shut down. And what that's created is a fully accessible music festival. So they made sure, because I've been to a few festivals, and it's usually grass, and it's which is perfectly understandable because that's where they're usually in fields and paddocks and whatnot. But what they did was they got this this matting that was almost like Lego that you stuck together, and it created a path. Like, it created a solid path. And it wasn't not like concrete. It was just like this sort of plasticky type matting, and it wasn't everywhere. It was just it was a wide enough path that, you know, a couple of wheelchairs or people that didn't want to walk on uneven ground could walk on. They knew the ground was even. So I think that's a big one, is having proper paths at events, because sometimes pushing through the grass and the uneven ground can be a bit difficult. And again, having like a accessible bathroom. I think sometimes that sounds obvious, but I think sometimes you go to big events and there may not be a bathroom, or there may only be one, and it's in the back corner of the facility, and you've got to make a big trip every time. So I think if you could have more than one, so one at each side of it, if you're having a big venue or a big festival, more than one would be ideal. I think one that's really come up recently and is getting acknowledged only recently is having a sensory, like, quiet space for people with autism or any other intellectual disabilities that may be overwhelmed by the activity. Having a bit of a quiet space and a chill out zone, as the Ability Fest call it. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you could do, but it's also a lot of basic things. Once you put in those foundations, it makes it easier for everyone. And again, that festival is open to everyone, disability or not, and everyone. I mean, we've done 2 of them already, and it's the best festival I've been to, because one, you see people that wouldn't usually go to a music festival because they know that it's accessible. They know that their needs have been catered for, and I had the best time because I think it was the first music festival I'd been to at the time when the first one happened 2 years ago, because I was always worried about access and getting around, and that gave me the confidence to go to other ones and also consult. I've also given feedback to other festivals. So, well, this is what Ability Fest done, and if they could do it, it's clearly not that difficult. So, like, let's make it, you know, let's make it easier, and some of those festivals have taken some of that feedback on board, which is good to hear. I hope that answered your question.
I've got a question, Oliver. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. My computer was dropping in and out, so I'm sorry if you've already covered this, but I'm wondering, I've noticed that there's a lot more visibility in the media of people with disabilities. For example, Carl Finlay and the Listen Able podcast. Loved your episode, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering if you have noticed a change in attitudes as a result of that increasing exposure?
Yes, I think I have, and as I touched on as well with there is definitely a changing attitude and towards the social model of disability and whatnot. I think there is, and I think people like Dylan have been a big driving force with that. But I have noticed it more on a sort of a micro local level. Yeah, there is a general shift in how people view disability and I think there is. I hope that that's what you're after, but I think there definitely is, and that's going to only continue to get better. I think because there'll be more sort of spaces for people with disability. A good example too is Dylan with his tennis. Channel 7 put that on, like on centre, and the Australian Open put that on centre court, and then play his tennis final on TV for everyone to watch. The Paralympics are now on commercial TV. They used to be on, like the ABC did a great job for many years, but their coverage was quite limited sometimes, and the commercial stations have picked it up and they really promote it and really pump it up when the Paralympics are on. And I think that's an amazing thing, because there was a time where many of us may not have thought we'd, and there's been many Paralympians before that have gone unnoticed, and their achievements have gone unnoticed because they just weren't in the public eye. But I think was a big achievement. I think the first Olympics that happened in was, I think, London, and yeah, the Paralympics have really made some progress in the last sort of 3 or 4 Olympics.
Thank you.
No worries.
Are there any other questions? Are there any in the chat, Rachel?
No, there's I'd just like to ask a quick question. Oliver, you mentioned earlier in your presentation about the wheelchair being a key symbol for accessible facilities, and how that's only representative of a very small proportion of the amount of people who experience disabilities. So I'm just wondering if you've got any suggestions for what symbols we could use instead, or to complement it, just so we can get the messaging a bit clearer as to what accessible means.
That's a great question. And when I found that stat and that fact, I was wondering that myself. But I think maybe even within the symbol, still have the wheelchair, but maybe have next to that within the same symbol. I don't know what maybe someone that's holding a cane to maybe identify that they're vision impaired, or I'm not sure how you could actually make that a practical sort of option, because I do know that why the wheelchair is sort of the symbol, because it's a very visible thing. But yeah, that is a good, because like that comes back to the point of, like, so many disabilities are invisible. So how do you make something visible that's invisible? That's an issue that I think, me included, we're still wondering about. And yeah, because I think most disabilities are invisible, and I think I'll just touch on as well, like, I've been able to really succeed in the last sort of 3 years because of the NDIS. So I don't know who's had experience with the NDIS, but I know from the NDIS point of view, before that was brought into effect, that's been able to give, for the NDIS, 92% of the participants on the NDIS now had no support or funding before the scheme, and I was in that 92%. So I think that's another really good progression that we've made with the NDIS. I know a lot of people have had issues with that and accessing funding and resources. But for me personally, it's been a great thing, and I've been able to really flourish because I've had access to funding and support I never did. So I know that may not have answered your question about the symbol, but yeah, it's a fascinating one, and I'm too thinking about how we can make it more sort of accessible for people and sort of create more knowledge and awareness.
Great. Any more questions? No? Okay. Please welcome Councillor of the Royal City of Wangaratta, Councillor Ashley Fitzpatrick, to talk about the council and what we are doing to make the community more accessible for our community.
Hi Tegan, thanks everyone. You can probably hear my sausage dog barking in the background. Puppy life is great. So I'm just gonna let him out, so bear with me. Lenny here, come on. There you go. He's good just until now, but I just wanted to say on behalf of the Royal City of Wangaratta, I really would like to thank everyone for supporting this great online event today and celebrating our all abilities. Here at Council, we recognise the importance of accessible services, facilities and communities, and that's why we have things in place like our Community and Access Inclusion Plan, our fantastic reference group to advocate for our community and keep us Council accountable. At the Royal City of Wangaratta, we are committed to supporting our all abilities, encouraging diversity and being inclusive and accessible for all in our community. This is something I'm quite passionate about whilst being a councillor. You know, at the Royal City of Wangaratta, we're also committed to supporting our all abilities, encouraging that diversity and being inclusive and accessible for all. You may have noticed we're steering away from the word disability, and this is because we're focused on the person themselves, not the disability. We're more focused on the able and not the label. I just want to also say a special thank you to Tegan for organising this important day, and a special thank you to Oliver for sharing your motivational stories and holding us accountable to get educated, be proactive in society. And this has made me really motivated, and you can see my pen, I've been taking some fantastic notes on what we can do as a council, as your community leaders. And I also want us just to thank everyone for taking the time to support not only today, but every day to be inclusive and accepting diversity in our community. So thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Our next speaker is Di Weatherall from our wonderful accessibility reference group.
I better unmute myself, I forgot about that. Okay, so as Tegan just said, I'm from the reference group, and the Royal City of Wangaratta Accessibility Reference Group is made up of community members with lived experience of disability. This group meets monthly to identify and discuss emerging issues and barriers with a focus on access and inclusion. We advise council on those issues so they can be resolved to make our community accessible, inclusive and safe for everyone, including those without the disability, I guess, in hindsight. This group gives people with the lived experience a voice in our community to break down their barriers in our environment, change perceptions and stereotypes, and increase awareness and understanding. And I really hope, if you'd like to become a member of the Wangaratta Accessibility Reference Group, to please contact this Royal City of Wangaratta. Thank you.
Thanks, Di. Are there any questions around the accessibility reference group? No?
Right.
Now we have an opportunity for people to share stories and achievements of 2020. For those of you who got your pack sent out to you or picked them up from council, within the pack there's 2 questions. One is, what are you most proud of? And the other is, what is your achievement?
2020's been awesome. All the online stuff is really suited me. I didn't have to worry about going out and figuring how to get somewhere and do things. even the doctors.
Anyone else have anything to share?
I think that 2020 has shown us that a lot of the barriers that we've had about working from home and working from different places don't actually have to be there. Prior to working at council, I was with the Level Crossing Removal Authority, and it's a construction site. And the traditional view in construction is that you can't do it off-site. And they learned with the onset of COVID how many people could actually work from home and how we could interact that way. And I think that it's pushed a lot of people's hands to really make things more accessible for everyone.
Great. Thank you, Denise. Anything else? No? Yeah, I think all our workplaces are now a lot more flexible, which will help people with disabilities. And yeah, thank you all for attending this event. It's been a great event, and I would like to thank Oliver for being a brilliant guest speaker, Chelsea for our acknowledgement to country, Di for her insight into the accessibility reference group, Councillor Fitzpatrick for her time today, and the community accessibility school leavers for packing our International Day of People with Disability bags. I would also like to thank Beck and the Grit and Resilience team for sponsoring this event. Denise for funding our Auslan interpreters, Georgia and Kelly for assistance with technology and social media, and Rachel for delivering some of the bags out last night. And I especially want to thank all of you for coming and helping spread the word and awareness around disability and making our community more accessible and knowledgeable about disability. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tegan.
Yeah, thanks very
Well
much.
done.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.